Now you're a full-time nerd, baby, all the way. Gain an extra 50 pounds, pounding away those snacks. No exercise for you. It's just sitting around playing games, watching TV. Milk chugs, more like milk chugs than milk duds. How do they call them milk duds when everyone is a winner? They're not. There's no. I've yet to find an actual dud.
Hello, welcome to Carnival Personnel. I'm Jacques. We're starting early.
Hello, and this is a beef. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Biff. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Biff, how can women scare gynecologists?
Ho, I don't know. How can women scare the gynecologist?
Becoming ventriloquist.
Ooh, that's a tough word for you to say.
It really
I have
is.
an accent, and I can say ventriloquist.
This is an easier one for me.
I doubt
What?
it.
Biff, what do the existence of boobs prove?
Ooh, mon ami, what do the existence of the boobs prove?
Men can focus on two things at once.
Hi-yo.
Hello,
You are correct, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Scarful Personnel. Joe, we had a...
Who is Joe? This is Beef.
Biff, we had, as you were just saying, a amazing run of guests, and going to make a little bit of a Carnival Personnel podcast announcement that it has been decided that for the next month or so, we are going to go back to dropping 2 podcasts a week. We've just had so many great sideshow guests that it's almost a shame to have to wait a month to have the guests we just talked to, Angelica, I'm going to say their name wrong.
Please do.
Scanora.
Hey!
I got it right. Scanora.
Nice. First try.
She was the co-winner of this year's Boston Comedy Festival. She's from Toronto and is a delight and hysterical. Yesterday, the 3 of us talked to a writer of the definitive historical accounting from day one, the history of college radio. Not just the great bands and all of that, but how college radio came to be. It's very technical, it's very historical, and then it's also talks about the bands that just redefined, my will to live in the 80s and early 90s. Anyways, the name of the book is Live from the Underground. The writer is Catherine Rye Jewell. And yeah, we also, just last week we had, Dave Rattigan. We've had so many great guests that instead of every other week, and we have friends that I've got to know over like the last year in comedy and stuff like that who are like, oh yeah, love to come on your crappy little podcast. So for probably the next month or so, we're going to go back to dropping sideshows on Thursday.
Because I like to have production meetings on air.
We'll table this, and we'll get right to the important thing. Joe's son was just in a fantastic high school play. Why don't you talk a little? Why don't you do a little victory lap about his role and what the play was, and how great his hair looked on the photos on Facebook?
Sure. He is a senior, and this is my younger son, Rowan. and he was in the cast of 12 Angry People, or it was 12 Angry Men, but it took place in the 90s, the thing said, but it didn't. They had clear 50s. They didn't do anything to change the script. I think they swapped Khrushchev for, I mean, they put in Gorbachev instead of Khrushchev kind of thing. Like, hey, we're really bringing this up to modern day, relatability, because, people in the audience grew up in the 80s. They know the 80s. They don't know the 50s anymore because we forget about the past. Anyway, 12 Angry Men, he played juror number 12. They aged up his hair a little bit. They kind of gave him some gray kind of streaks on the side. Whatever. He was great. He had to put on this sort of like salesman affect to his delivery. Very fast talking. Opposite of me, I am very slow, and I put people to sleep when I talk, especially myself. That's why there are long pauses in my speech, because I don't know how to talk. But he was great, and it was 12 Angry Men, and it was a high school production. And what else do you want me to say about it?
No, that's great. I mean, I got to chat with him yesterday about it at your humble abode before we went on another Carnival personnel field trip together.
That's right. We took the arduous journey. Do we go? How did we take? Do we take a biplane there? I forget how. How did we get to half a mile from my house? Maybe a quarter mile. I might be, being exaggerated. No, it's about a half a mile. It was about a half a mile, like a 5-minute drive from my house to the Sons of Italy.
Wannabe. It wasn't even technically a Sons of Italy.
Yeah, it was called the Alosia Function Hall in Arlington, Massachusetts. And to further find out where in the world does Joe live, you can kind of do the math now. Hey, a quarter mile from the Alosia, or half a mile. It's in that radius, just eventually.
It was kind of the Spirit Airlines of function halls, no frills,
Right, almost no parking either. But you're right, it was.
And you've got to navigate a trench to walk to it.
You almost rolled your ankle leaving that establishment. Yeah, I'm glad we stayed late to say hi to Tony V and Dave Rattigan, who we saw. Also, Dave Lamb was the comedian hosting. He was great. It was all a good time. The beer was piss water. I'm sorry. If you're gonna serve beer, and you're gonna, here's Joe's review of the Alosia Function Hall that particular Saturday. The beer was not good. You know what? Here's a tip: don't take the beer directly out of the trunk of the car immediately before serving it. Maybe chill it to a sort of a serving temperature, a 40-something degrees. Maybe also beers traditionally tend to have a head on it. If the beer, if my piss looks frothier than the beer, that is a problem. Not recommended, but you know what? At least it was expensive. And
but the comedy was great. And yes. our last two sideshow guests is the legendary recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Boston Comedy Festival, Mr. Tony V, and last week's guest, who was just that was so much fun. Last week's podcast, Dave Rattigan is just. It was just hysterical on podcast. He's also a show producer. I've done 3 or 4 shows for him, but he's been headlining someplace else, and he books these other shows. So this is the first time I got to see a full set of his.
But enough about the comics. Back to the beer. Now, if you're really gonna charge those prices, I'm sorry. And at least they didn't where there's no food either. I got a nice email.
You got I
got an email the morning of, oh, by the way, the kitchen will be closed, so no food will be served. But then when we got there was a stack of 6 pizza boxes that I don't know if it was a community pizza. They were all it was a function hall, so there were just these round tables with about 8 folding chairs around each one. They're pretty good sized wooden folding or wooden Tables. What the fuck, Joe? Of course they're made of wood. Good Lord. You over-explain every goddamn thing. Even when you fuck up, you over-explain the fucking up. Just stop talking. Over.
I'm going to say the median age was 60. Like, we were on the young side of the crowd, I think.
Yeah, we're the only one that got the OnlyFans reference.
That's because you're younger and I'm a pervert. So
and you're on my OnlyFans, so thanks for that.
You know what? You can blame me or your fantastic feet. Like, who's really the bad guy here?
Those aren't feet.
So it's always fun. And, Joe and I, everybody suffers from imposter syndrome on some level. There's some times when I'm hanging out with certain comics, I'll be like, I shouldn't be sitting at this table with these people who are really funny and professional and talking to me like I'm a peer. I'm gonna find an excuse to go wait in my car. And it's funny because it's like, go ahead and explain when Tony saw you and you guys said hello.
Yeah, we shook hands, and we'd actually seen each other like 2 weeks ago, and he'd been on the podcast. So I've introduced myself to him about twice already. Maybe also no, and then I saw him at the venue like for his at the city winery thing. So like 3 times. I've met Tony V at this point since last Saturday 3 times.
And the last like 4 weeks.
Right. And he's not a confused man. He has a memory. He's probably good with names and people to get to where he is. And I go, he goes, hey, how's it going? And I go, yeah, hi, it's Joe. And he goes, I know who you are. It's like, I'm like, oh, no, I'm just reminding you that, because sometimes I forget who I am. And then also, I wasn't sure what your name was. I just throw out names. I just say, Joe, and then I hopefully land on the correct name. But yeah,
it was funny. It was hysterical.
I don't have imposter syndrome. I am an imposter. It's not a syndrome. It's been peer reviewed and certified. I do not belong.
And then afterwards, it was just really nice. We just hung out and talked with Dave and Tony for a little bit. That was fun. After somebody from the audience came up and did the classic, did Tony's bit for Tony and then say, remember when you did that 20 minutes ago?
Ah, yes. Yeah. I mean, well, Tony's a very popular guy, so like he's drawing the crowd. He's drawing the crowds. He's shaking hands. He's kissing babies. He's doing all that.
No, and it's funny because when I told Jim McHugh, I'll help with the festival, and then the Tony thing ended up being on Saturday, and I had a thing for Rattigan. I told Dave, hey, I'm really sorry, but I'm gonna do this thing. It's and he said, yeah, no worries. So it was nice for Joe, who realized like the next day, it's like, oh, both Tony and Dave are in my neighborhood next week, but the venue doesn't have a website. It's a new apparatus, Boston Funny, but their website on the flyer that says bostonfunny.com doesn't work, because they can't make the website work. So to get tickets, you got to go through a third party type thing.
Right. I think I saw a .ru at the end of that, which a little suspicious there.
But it was nice. And then when the guy, is it Henry, who's running it?
No, there was Harry.
Harry! My brother Harry, the old son. But he was like, hey, hi, okay, thanks for coming. Hey, how do you think I should advertise in Arlington? And Joe and I are like, what?
Right. I'm like, do we look like consultants? Oh, clearly we're the classiest people dressed here. We're both wearing ratty sweatshirts. I at least put on jeans. At least they think I really spiffed it up that evening. Yeah, so it was.
I was wearing jorts.
Right. Rocking jorts, I should say. It was, but you know what? I don't want to make this a name drop fest. I know some people in the audience don't like it when we name drop. It's a little self-indulgent. I don't want to, keep on bragging about us hobnobbing with
No, I mean, what
celebs.
De Niro has told you so many times. Look, when you're over at Pesci's house, the last thing he wants to do is hear you, oh, I hung out with Jay Leno stories, because it just drives Tom Hanks out the door.
Right. And, Marty Scorsese was saying the same thing to me. He said, Steve, and then Lorne Michaels came in and said, this bit isn't going anywhere. You should probably not do anymore. Bits. Nobody likes your impersonations. They don't sound like people. They're you talk like people, but you don't sound like people. That's not the same thing. Jim Carrey sounds like people. You talk like people. Yeah, just
That said, so last Saturday was a fun show. I got to, again, for the kindness of Mike Katrobis, he and Steve Bjork had a show 4.1 miles from the house. And I timed it. It's like, because it's right near my kid's school. It's like 7 minutes and 38 seconds. They couldn't perform. It wouldn't be easier for me to get to a show if they did it in my living room. So, and so
I almost asked Tony to come back to the house and watch TV with us. It's like, it's only going to take an extra, half hour out of your night?
Yeah, and we watched. Well, we'll get into what we watched.
Yeah, whatever.
But no, and it was a fun night, and it was one of those. This is what working comics do. It was at a place called the Tingsboro Sportsman's Club. My kids
a lodge.
I did make a joke to a couple of the comics, and it was a really fantastic night. The four people who were on the bill: Mike Katrobis, Steve Bjork, Pat Collins, and J.J. Jones, are all headliners in New England. And so this was I had all intentions of just going and laughing for a couple hours. And then Mike, who I've been working with a lot, last few weeks, said, hey, you want to go up and do 5? And I had him pick out which bit I was going to do, because he's not been going over the material as much as how I say them. He's like, yeah, the writing's pretty okay. It's just you that sucks. So we got you to be less you. And
We're going to get someone to play a better you. Anyway, sorry.
No, that is one of my favorite stories of all time. But I did reference a place of being the Water Buffalo Large, because the median age was over 50. People got it. Somebody ended up yelling yabba dabba doo, got a huge laugh. And so it was a fun night. And again, after the show, here's Steve saying, hey, this was really good. X, Y, and Z. He's like, can I give you advice? Because he has in the past, which I've taken, which made me a lot better. And I assured him, yes, any and all advice that you're willing to give me, I will gleefully take it. He says, hey, you were reaching out for the mic and you're kind of holding the mic stand a little nervously. And I said, that's because I was reaching out and holding the mic stand nervously. But that's the thing. It's when Mike 6 months ago said, hey, here's the trick. Here's the key. Go to shows. See how the people who do this 3 or 4 times a week do it. Watch them, work a joke, over the course of a couple months. Watch how they interact with crowds. Watch how when a bit doesn't work, they make it not working into the bit, type thing. So it was I'm just spoiled that there's so much great shows around. I get to work with so many people. Mike is putting me up at Navigation Brewery the last Sunday of the month with Christine Hurley, who I'd probably be paying $25 to go see that show. Because again, it's 10 minutes from the house. Why wouldn't I? And so that's the best thing. I get to perform with somebody like that. The room's going to be packed too, and I don't have to pay $25 to be there. So
win-win.
Right. So yeah, so that's, as far as that goes. And again, the working with Mike, I now have a couple other friends, Anthony and Wayne from Open Mike Payne, who started working with him. And I've told them beforehand, it's like, it's awful. It is awful because you have homework and Mike starts living in your head. You talk with him for an hour one-on-one, you go over a specific bit or a couple bits, and then the rest of your week as you're rewriting it or rehearsing it, you literally feel like, as you said, the Force Ghost presence of Mike just standing there kind of like, eh.
Say, write the punchline, Jacques. Write the punchline.
And it is. It's a big step back so that you can take the 2 steps forward, like huge steps. And already just, one of the interesting things, I know I'm going way inside baseball. So I have let's say a 4.5 minute bit that's 2 pages written out. So Mike's been really good about, okay, this is great if you're a storyteller on the moth. Don't change a thing. If you're going to tell a story on an NPR storytelling show, this is perfect. If you're going to tell it at a comedy club, cut out a lot of it. He doesn't say, lose this, but it's like, look, you got 3 lines before you get to the setup to the punchline. Do you need those 3 lines? But then the big thing is like helping me, as you know, Joe, more than anybody, slow the fuck down.
Yes.
Take your time.
Right.
If by accident somebody thinks one of your little stories is worthy of a laugh,
hold for laughter. Yeah.
Now, is that a new concept in comedy?
I think it just sort of came about during the pandemic. I think a lot of people were not holding for laughter prior to then, and it's like, because of the delay.
Right.
Now they're like, hey, wait a minute. If we just let the laughter roll out, A, it eats up time. B, you're soaking it in. You're kind of letting the joke ruminate,
And so Mike's like, yeah, so this 4-minute bit, you're going to cut out 25-30% of the words, but it might even be a minute longer because, here you're rushing this. It's like, and a lot of the jokes that you write me are these time release capsules. You know what I mean? Where if you drink a cold beer and you put it to your lips, you instantly feel the cold beer. If
not if the Alosia.
Right into the propeller. but if you're a pill popper, which neither one of us have ever been, those take a little while to kick in.
Right.
So
like this gummy isn't working.
Right.
Let me have 2 more. Uh-oh.
I can smell colors now. But that's the thing. And so, that was Saturday that I went up. I taped it, and then I sent it to Mike, so we could like break it down. And there was 2 really blatant times where it was like a 4-second laugh, 2 seconds in, I'm starting the next bit. And then there was a couple times when it was like the laugh's almost done, but I start another bit. And at a show like this, where it's a round tables things and people might be with their friends, they're like, oh yeah, you know how people joke at a comedy stuff where they hear, and it's like, why am I rushing to get to the next bit? Versus enjoy the few laughs you're going to get, moron. I might be paraphrasing what Mike said.
You might be paraphrasing what I'm saying all the time.
Well, and it's funny because so much of it is like, it's just repetition. And the hardest thing about these working with Mike, it's one-on-one. It's like you're reading your presentation in front of the professor, and that's it. Like there's nothing, and he's heard this bit 6 times in the last 3 weeks, so you're not gonna get the fake laugh.
That's like when you tell me your jokes over and over, and sometimes I don't laugh on the phone. Like it's not, and then you have to I like when you tell your jokes, and it's like you're telling a story about you telling the joke that I've heard 18 times before, and then when you're finished with a joke, you always say, and then people laugh, and there's a laugh. Like you're always you're filling the air. That just the silence. Sometimes, hey, listen, I'm a jaded person.
But
I can be funny.
But I don't want that little story to eclipse everything else we're talking about.
Yes.
You like that? You see what I did?
Yeah.
How do you, besides staring up at the sun without protective lenses on, how do you spend your eclipse, Joe?
I stared at the sun with protective glasses with my family on my back porch. Nice. We had a nice clear shot of the sun. It was up there. It was a rare clear day in Boston. We had like 90% totality in our area, right? Something like that, where you'll basically at its peak, like at 3:30 in the afternoon, when most of the sun was covered by the moon, you saw like maybe like a sliver of the sun, and it was cool. It was cool looking. I mean, I've seen the eclipse in 2017, but it was cloudy that day in our area, so it wasn't as impactful. Here, it was like, okay, great. It was nice. And it was also nice to see like other people outside, and it was a nice day. Like it
was gorgeous.
Top it off. It was a nice day. Although my son was coming back to school from in the school bus on when the eclipse was happening, and he was late. And we text him, it's like, what's going on? And he goes, well, we're stopped by this park because so many people stopped to watch the eclipse at this park that they parked too close to the curb or the corner, and the bus clipped one of the cars and scratched it. So they had to stop. It wasn't like a major thing, but they had to stop and wait and maybe exchange papers or whatever. But they also had to figure out how to get out of there, like how to move, because
it's hard to hit and run in a bus.
Really yeah, right. Well, unless you're playing like a video game, like Grand Theft Auto, unfortunately with kids in the back, you can't do that. But
because you need all of them to keep their mouth shut.
That's right. We got to get the story straight. But he can't. He was home in time for the eclipse, and it was fine. It was a nice little thing. What about you? How did you spend the eclipse?
I spent the eclipse being a little annoyed because I really wanted to drive up. I wanted to take the boys out of school and then just drive early in the morning.
For nothing less than totality, complete 100%.
Yeah, my dad and one of my nephews went up, to Vermont and stuff like that. It's like I really should have. And management was like, no, they've missed a lot of school. The little guys missed almost a month of school. No, they can do a half day. But I'm like, what's the fucking difference?
Why go to school at all? Honestly,
100%. Look, hey, I didn't go to school. I turned out. Anyways, so we take we take the half day, and then we meet her at work, and she works out in Concord, and it's a really nice space. It was really great. They have a huge yard. But then halfway through, that's when we should have done this. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, yes, we should have. Too late now. But here's my big takeaway from the eclipse is it's almost at totality. It's 65-70% of what it's going to be. And all of a sudden, we just start getting eaten alive by mosquitoes.
Right.
And then it was like one of my normal comedy shows.
Crickets.
The ear-piercing sound of crickets. And I looked to management, and I'm like, do you hear that? And then once I pointed it out, it was ear-piercing because the Wild Kingdom thought it was dusk. They thought it was 6:30.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
But I did. I was like, why are we getting eaten alive? Because mosquitoes don't come out at 2 o'clock on a really sunny day.
Right.
Like this. But then when the crickets really were full effect, it was that was something that, of course that was going to happen. Once it started happening, you're like, right, that makes sense. And then you start thinking about how fucked up the animal kingdom is. It's like.
Yeah, right. Kingdom. Yeesh. Some kingdom. I say, why am I so bitter against animals?
I don't know.
The order of things.
I don't know.
Fuck the animals. No, I like animals. A lot of them are delicious. So
you're
not a very good person. We had this weird sepia tone at it peak. It looked like a 1920s photograph. I was ready to do the jitterbug at some point. Yeah.
But that was, and then, and of course, because I have such a morbid brain sometimes, I started to think about how people must have dealt with eclipse.
Oh, God.
Yeah, right, exactly.
In the olden day, in ancient times.
We've upset Ra somehow. He's taking the sun. Somebody kill a virgin.
You make it sound like that stuff doesn't happen today.
Yeah, that's true.
Come on. How many conspiracy theories were surrounding the eclipse? And, how many people, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, took earthquakes in New York and in New Jersey and the eclipse to say, these are reminders that things are not in natural state, and to be, maybe be more devout and maybe pay attention to God and all that shit.
Yeah, no, the adulteress with 6 toes should talk about.
How many gays were blamed on how many gays were blamed because of the eclipse and the earthquake?
See, I thought it was somehow tied to the Jewish space laser.
Yeah, you know what? I would think this Jewish space laser would shoot down the eclipse.
You thought so, right?
Right. You just kind of do away with it, Like, why have a laser built
If
by
you-
Jewish people?
If you're not
they're-
going to use it.
An unused Jewish space laser is a useless Jewish space laser. Now,
Amen.
you say that 10 times.
Amen. Which is a Christian thing which is a weird thing.
Right.
Again, coming out of an atheist just makes it. We've gone to plaid. Speaking of good news, OJ Simpsons dead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or as some people have put on Twitter, cancer has denied being the killer and vows to seek the the real killer.
Cancer wrote a book, If I Killed Him.
Yeah, it was weird. I was watching a little side thing. I was watching a clip from The View, and because my wife watches it on record. And,
sure, it's Joe. It's okay.
I love The View.
It's okay.
Anyway, I love Joy. I love Sarah. I love Anna.
Delights.
Elisa, not so much, or whatever her name is, the Republican one. No, but one of them took to say, I guess she had like a personal thing with prostate cancer, like maybe somebody in her family, because at the end of the OJ thing, they said, I just want to take a moment I know this is a weird way to do this, but I do want to bring to light that he died of prostate cancer and everybody should get their prostates examined. I'm like, you know what? I think prostate cancer got the rare W in this. Like, this is prostate cancer's day. Let's not rain on PC's parade.
And of course the internet remains undefeated. My two favorite memes is a picture of him. This one hurts.
Yes.
And then the other one, somebody photoshopped the white Bronco into a hearse.
I saw somebody's real license plate for their Ford Ford Bronco that said not OJ. Like, that was their vanity plate. Anyway, 2 people were murdered brutally 30 years ago, but we have to find the laughs. Although I did see that the executor of OJ's estate apparently put out a statement that they were going to do everything within their power to make sure that the Goldmans and like the girlfriend or wife of girlfriend of Ron Goldman, or whatever. Oh no, sister of Ron Goldman, don't get any money from his estate.
Yeah.
Like, what a pile of shit.
Yeah.
Like, what a pile of shit. Prostate cancer. I hope the prostate cancer jumped from OJ's body and leaped into this executor's body. Yeah. No, this executor's body. Yeah.
Well, it's probably one of his 2 children he had with Nicole, who he killed their mother. Anyways, enough of him.
We don't know that. You don't know. We don't know. But yeah, but you know what? Who also did get a resurgence on the internet? One Norm Macdonald.
OJ Simpson's new fitness video was released this week, and hitting the shelves next week, Simpson's newest video, Dorf on Stocking. According to retailers, the most popular Halloween mask this year is OJ Simpson. And the most popular Halloween greeting is, I'll kill you and that guy who's bringing over your glasses, or treat. And finally, in honor of the 50th anniversary of their first publication, Random House will be releasing special commemorative issues of many Dr. Seuss classics. The first to hit the bookshelves will be Green Eggs and Ham and OJ is Guilty. Judge Ito was interviewed this week by a local TV station in Los Angeles. Asked by the interviewer if it was appropriate for a supposedly impartial judge to be on TV with his case still pending, Ito said, maybe not, but how appropriate is it to kill your ex-wife? It was revealed this week that defense lawyer Johnny Cochran once abused his first wife. In his defense, Cochran said, hey, at least I didn't kill her like some people I know. And in court this week, Cato Kalin testified that O.J. Simpson did not appear angry before or after the period of his wife's murder. But Kalin admitted he could have been a touch edgy while he was actually murdering her.
Oh, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. You think he was waiting at the pearly gates for OJ to come by?
I don't know. What's funny? Somebody said that somebody wrote a piece on GQ about like Norm Macdonald and like his OJ jokes and all that stuff, and basically like how Norm, like, once the OJ news ended, like he kind of stopped with the OJ stuff. Like, it didn't make it his identity. He focused on his stand-up and all that stuff. And he said something online where after OJ died, he said, "You know what? I bet you anything Norm would have zagged and like mourned the loss of a married man, like a retired family man or something like that. You know, like he would have taken the death more solemnly rather than more reveling."
Well, it's funny because as we talked when he did the Celebrity Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, his guest in the studio was one Kato Kalin, which is just,
He's a good man.
you
He's a
know,
good man.
and it's funny. I don't know. Joe and I were on the app Cameo one day, just looking things up. You can, and maybe his price has gone up, but you could get a Cameo.
Oh, it definitely
Shout
shot
out.
up since the OJ death. I'm sure has gone up. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's, you know, is Marsha Clark on there as well, or Christopher Darden, Lance Ito, all the celebrities. Oh my God, yeah.
And yeah, and speaking
And
of
we wouldn't have had the Kardashians without OJ. Just
So,
you know,
so that alone, I'm glad he's dead. Moving on, we're not going to talk about it unless you want to. That I don't think we do. But the first criminal trial starts this week, and my one takeaway is, you can wake me when that guy's wearing a jumpsuit that matches his skin tone. So you and I both just assume that, nothing's going to happen.
yep. You got to go through the motions, though. Justice has to kind of at least fake it. I don't know, right?
Even proven guilty, we know nothing's going to happen. We just know it. But it's depressing, but it will be fun to see the truth meltdowns,
Yeah.
and the spaghetti
Will it?
scenes. No, it won't. It won't. So sport. The only thing that I got in sport right now is our good friend of the podcast, already mentioned once, as we are recording, Dave Lapointe from Complaints and Observation, for the first time, got to see his beloved West Ham in the Premier League play today at London Stadium. Yeah. He's been over to London before, but it's never timed out with, getting to go to see a game. Unfortunately, they lost 2-0. It's the first time in like 50 years that they've lost both the games to Fulton in a season.
Thanks, Dave.
They lost their game, and I hope it didn't kind of diminish, the experience of being a fan as long as he has, but also, he has equated it before, he's a Boston sports fan. So he's like your age. So he had
He's
good
pre-2000,
a good 20-year run of misery and utter disappointment
and embarrassment. Let's not forget embarrassment.
Before the amazing run that they had. So he's well suited to cheer for a team that he knows if they get close, they will find a way to not just fuck it up, but fuck it up in the most comically absurd, you can't get mad because this actually happened kind of way.
Right, yeah. I mean, you can hear the yakety sax playing when,
But
the yakety sax is the Benny Hill song.
And everybody who has that in their head for the next 3 hours, you're welcome. No, so I do. I hope he had a great time. But unless you have anything in sport, you got anything gaming wise or TV wise to chat?
Gaming wise, not so much. I'm just sort of playing some retro stuff. Nobody cares. And nobody cares about the modern stuff either. So no gaming.
What is the
reports.
retro stuff? Is something from the library?
You know what? I've been playing more so. It's funny. I have all this like physical stuff, like all these actual consoles that I've. Thank you for helping me move that 150-pound television up 3 flights of stairs.
But at least it has 2 weird turns going up the steps.
Yes, right. The sharpest of turns. Like 135-degree angles. It's just kind of like, what? Who designed this? MC Escher? Anywho. But at least it's not being used. I'm actually playing the retro stuff on the emulators on my Steam Deck because they have they're tied to the internet that has this little app or this little thing called Retro Achievements. Basically, like when you go into like Xbox or PlayStation and you get trophies and stuff for hitting milestones in games. they do
Do
that.
I?
They have that for retro games on emulators as well. Like there's a community who puts these things together. So I'm like, it gives you like a nerd like me, like an extra kind of replayability of going back into the old library and trying to hit some of the, it's a good time waster. I'm withering away my life in front of these goddamn games, but I can't stop playing because I'm not going to write comedy. I'm not doing that. I'm certainly not watching anything on television that's worthwhile. Yeah, I don't know. We did just re-sign up for Disney Plus. But I haven't really watched anything.
Well, yeah, what's on that? Oh, well, and by the time we got back to Joe's last night, we didn't have. Actually, we laughed ourselves out a little bit. Tony and Dave Rattigan brought their A game, but we were going to watch the Steve Martin documentary, but it was one of those things like, I got an hour drive home and we're talking. We recorded a podcast at I had to. We couldn't, but
we needed more digestible stuff. So what I did, within the past couple of weeks, I found some more obscure fans of Carnival Personnel podcast and my tastes in old Boston media. Will know the TV show Chronicle on Channel 5 or WCVB Boston, and also like some ancillary productions by the same TV station from the 80s. Like in the 80s and the 70s, they were like actually churning out like a bunch of like newer original stuff. One of which I'd never heard of. It was a pilot for a show called It Happened Right Here. It was in 1982, produced in Boston. It was kind of like That's Incredible. Remember That's Incredible with John Davidson and Kathy Lee Crosby or something? Or no, she was on Real. Oh, I don't know. One of those things. But everybody knows That's Incredible that listens to this podcast at least. They tried to do that in Boston. It was a kind of a dud. But the saving grace was one. It was co-hosted by a woman named Janet Longhart, which I'm not familiar with, but also one Gene Rayburn of Match Game fame. This is 82. We looked it up. He was 75 at the time, something like that. Like he was born in 1917.
He looked great for his age.
Yes, he did look great for his age. He's a pro. The show itself was like half an hour. We didn't really watch a lot of the show because the same website I got this footage from for the pilot actually had studio tape for the in-between stuff, like the behind the scenes, like getting shots of the audience reaction, multiple takes of certain on-camera things for the hosts, them, like bantering with the crew and complaining about not flipping the cue cards fast enough, that sort of thing. Like all of that was preserved, and that was more fascinating.
That was,
like Jacques said, like when he watches his new favorite show, Doctor Who, he's going back into those reruns. You're flipping through them like you're an ADD person. You flip through, fast forward 15 seconds. Yeah. I kind of get what's going on here. I don't need to get all the details. But for something like this, where we're watching a behind the scenes thing,
mesmerized.
It's because you can't fast forward. If you do, you might miss like some little nugget or some little complaint or jab or quip, because it's.
Or the flopping the line 3 times.
Yes. Or the woman when Janet Longhart, I think that's her name, she gives this whole spiel about like, if it's weird or unusual, you'll find it happened right here. And she does the whole plug and it's for this WCVB Channel 5. And she goes, you'll find it right here, March 12th at 8:30 p.m. on Channel 6, a 5. And like... blows it. Everybody cracks up. It's just kind of like, oh, you now you got to do this whole goddamn spiel again because you missed the last word.
You don't remember the channel you're on.
Yes, that's a big flaw. But stupid stuff like that, I love.
It was great. It was, but just the footage of some stage director having the studio audience do takes of applause with nobody out on the stage. Like there's nothing, they're not applauding anything. You're like, okay, we need cutaways and everybody on 3, 2, and just start.
Or just a clean bed, like a clean audio bed of studio applause, like that they could lie on some other B-roll or something. But yeah, it was kind of, and by the way, the acts were like a strong man from Rhode Island will take cement blocks to his chest while people hammer away at him, and while he lies on a
bed. Yeah.
while he's lying on a bed of nails. Then there was also a little girl who was reading Shakespeare at age 2 and writing her own novel at age 4. By the way, that little girl from Worcester, who they profiled, was actress Alicia Witt. She was first cast in Dune, 1984, and then went on to have a successful career since then. And then the other person was like a miracle kind of. They couldn't speak, and this doctor at Mass Eye and Ear gave them the ability to speak. But we didn't watch that because, and also a seal that talks, which I thought sounded like Jabba the Hutt meets Dom DeLuise. You know, it was I don't know, it was funny, but whatever. It was hokey and it didn't land. It was only the one-off show. But you know what? That review or recap of the show probably went longer than
the show lasted.
It should have had. What are you watching?
I've been watching, as Joe knows, he has helped me see the error in my ways, and I just finished season 3 of David Tennant's run. Well,
of the new reboot.
The new reboot, and that was from 2005 to 2000. And it was great. You know, I've loved it. It was funny because this is Joe's management, like one of her big passion things. And it was fun just kind of, you know, getting into the minutia of what I've witnessed the first 3 seasons, the hokiness of certain aspects, the oh my God, I saw this thing, and it flooded memories came back from
the references to the old 70s series. Yeah,
you know, which were on PBS back here, and you know, when you had 3.5 channels and not a lot on at 11:30 at night, it's like, okay, well, I'll watch this. You know,
right? Exactly. I could watch bowling, or I could watch, you know, the Catholic sermon or Doctor Who rerun. All right.
I go with the Doctor Who. So that's been fun, you know, and I really like David Tennant. So it is. That's that and Ghost when management is around. My oldest is 17. We watched the season finale of Invincible, which is great.
It's the animated show on Amazon.
Yep.
About a superhero family.
Yep. Father and son, and you know, and it was good. There was, you know, there's the final episode didn't answer anything because it was meant to, you know, be a 2-parter with episode 1, season 3, hopefully answering the lingering questions here. But it was one of those, the guy got thrown by a bad guy through different realities, and you didn't see Batman, but you saw him sitting next to Batman's cape next to a gargoyle. It's like, so you dress as a bat and your name, that's lazy, isn't it? You know, and then he got thrown into another reality, and there was a Spider-Man kind of guy. So it's fun. It's dark. I mean, it's not a kid cartoon. It's definitely not.
I also heard good things about X-Men 97 on Disney.
Yeah. Has that started? I know they were going.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, people are really hyped about it online.
And so that's it. And now onto a parenting tip. What do you have? You know, proud father of this, you know, thespian killing it in 12 Angry People.
Well, we don't know that for sure yet. Oh, thespian. Yes. Parenting tip. Well, I would say if you're going to teach your child to drive, right, regardless of how behind they are in the timeline of when they should have gotten their license, and if you're going to teach them to drive, take them into an area that you're familiar with. You know, like if you happen to be familiar with the, like a, you know, kind of a tucked away area, it doesn't necessarily, you know, when you're ready to move past the parking lot phase and into actual like traffic, you know, or side roads, you know, take them to a familiar place. Like I did. I took my younger son, who's learning to drive, on a little driving lesson in my old stomping grounds near in the old Formal Edition era stomping grounds. Formal Edition being the cable access show that Jacques and I met on back in '94 when I was a teenager. He was in his 20s. Questions were asked, none were answered. About why he was hanging out.
Hey, at least I was drunk.
Yes, very. And you got me to drink. That was also very helpful. But yeah, we drove around in basically my friend's old neighborhood. Jim, our friend of our podcast.
Jim's on the podcast. Ooh, Jim's sitting right here. Ooh, Carnival personnel won't be the same. Jim is joining the podcast. Joining the podcast. Who voted for Trump? Jim, he's joining the podcast. Though he should be ashamed, cause his podcast is lame. Jim is his name. Jim.
And also Steve, a friend of ours. They lived pretty close to each other back then, and we drove around their old neighborhood because back roads, I'm familiar. Like this, not a lot of traffic there. It made it helpful for when my son pulled into the parking spot in the condo complex. That when he hit the gas instead of the brake and jumped the curve, there was enough of a distance between the curb and the building that we didn't go into the building. Oh, these fun times. I should learn how to use the emergency brake. I really should have one hand on the emergency brake in those situations. But lessons learned by all. He learned not to do that, and I learned to piss before I go on a driving lesson. So that's my parenting tip. Be familiar with the area you're teaching your child to drive. Jacques, you must have at least 4 or 5. So take about 20 minutes to go.
No, I'm doing such a great job. So where our little guy has essentially been banned from electronics a while ago, but he Rain Man's in the car, always asking if he can have my phone, and it's a relentless, annoying thing. But him and his brother had started watching a manga anime, a show called Jujutsu Kaisen. He had to go to the library the month that he wasn't in school, a couple times a week to meet up with a tutor. Was amazed that they had all the books, the library, and that he had gone to Newberry Comics and bought one of the books with his brother, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to get all of these." And that's $17 a piece. No, you are not. No, you're not. And then, I called my sister, who's a librarian, and, her librarians and a consortium of 28 others. So 2 days later, she had almost the entire series curated for him, which he tore through. He went from...
You're not supposed to tear the... Oh, you mean he read fast. Okay,
never reading to... I would take pictures every time I would turn around. We're waiting in line at the bank, and there he is sitting... reading his book, or in the line at wherever. He was ferocious reading, and then he started to read them online on the Alexa, the one thing he's able to have, but that doesn't help in the car. So he finished the 2 series he was on. I'm like, well, let's start another series. He's like, no, I'm gonna if I read another series, I'll just read it online. Well, that doesn't help me in the car because he's in the car with me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the library the other day and just got a couple books, different manga books, but in the same genre. And I just had him in the back seat. And when he got in the car, he's like, "I'm not reading these." I said, "No, you're not reading them. Those are mine. Those looked interesting." I got a couple Demon Slayers. Mm-hmm. Which is what Biff has been watching. I guess there's 1,000 episodes.
Well, there's also One Piece, yeah. But Demon Slayer is probably in the same
universe, right? And so I did. And they didn't have the first couple books of one series. They had 2 through 5, and they're like, "Well, we can hold these, and the other books in our system, we can have it delivered. You can pick these up in a few days." I'm great. But in the meantime, I just put those in the back, and he was like, "I'm not reading another series. I'm not starting with this." I said, "No, those are for me. They looked interesting." "Oh, fine." The next day we're driving and he was being quiet. I look in the mirror and just started reading them. And it's it might not be his favorite, but he is back onto another series.
I'm sorry.
No,
that's great.
100%. So that's my parenting tip. It's like, and it's the oldest thing in the book, and it's funny because, he does have, ODD that got talked about last night at the crowd. Wasn't that used to be called just being a prick?
ODD, of course, being
obstinance, defiance, disorder.
Yeah.
And he can't help it. If you say left, he's going to say right. So I'll see something on Instagram, a funny football clip, a funny story, a great play, and I know he's going to want to see it. But his first reaction, which always annoys me, is like, yeah, I don't fucking care. And so now I'll be like, to his mother, I'll be like, hey, and I'll mirror my phone to the screen. I'm like, oh, this is a really funny thing. This football guy, played in the 80s, and he had this beef with this guy, and then they were on this talk show together. And I'll show her that, which instantly makes him dial all in to watch. But if I say, hey, I'm going to put this on the screen for you to watch.
Right.
He wants to watch it. But there's that part of him that has to tell me he doesn't fucking care. I'm stupid. I have the worst memes. I should kill myself.
Yeah.
I'm not paraphrasing.
Actively promotes, actively promotes self-harm. Yeah. But of course, you have to be like Tom Sawyer,
right?
Yeah. You're like, you don't want to paint this fence. It's boring, Yeah. So I get it. I get it. These kids today, with their ODDs. Back in the 90s, it was OPP. We had problems with.
Me.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Other people's privates or penises or pussies or whatever the hell we couldn't say the word back then because of Tipper Gore. Thank you very much. Couldn't express our freedom of speech on the radio, which we talk about in the in a few months. When does that podcast drop? When we do the sideshow with the author of Live from the Underground, Catherine. We'll find out. You know what? Just keep your ears peeled. Yes, you can peel your ears, and it works. It helps you listen better. I peel mine twice a day. I use a salve to help heal after I peel. It's called a peel heal, and I'm not just babbling to cover for my stupid brain. Anyways, that's the podcast. Jacques, thank you for joining me on a wonderful trek to right down the street so we could see how the other side of the underbelly of Arlington lives. That's right, Italians. I'm calling you out as the underbelly. Oh no, there's a gentleman at my door. I'll be right back. I have to go see who this is. Oh, hello, sir. How are you? Oh my God. No, please. No, please. No, not my family. No, please. Anything but. I can't read the sign. Oh, there it is. Alana Foden will be next week's sideshow. Thank you. Unprompted. That just came out of nowhere. Alana Foden will be next week's sideshow. She's a great comedian. She also does like sex toy business type thing. You'll learn more. I certainly did, which I then forgot. But then I relearned because I remembered. That's what I need to do. Like sometimes I'll say something completely asinine, stupid. I'll put it on the internet. I'll forget about it. I'm like, that didn't happen. And then I'll, listen to myself because I'm vain when the podcast drops, and I'll hear myself say fucking stupid stuff. Like, did I say the C word 8 times in one podcast? Maybe. Was it under the guise of pretending to be Bill Burr? Who's to say? Is it because your friend, so-called friend, ambushes you by saying you're going to be reading something out of a magazine in the voice of Bill Burr? Yeah. Maybe that's the case. Thankfully, the Lorne Michaels thing from earlier, that was completely unprompted. It came up organically. I figured everybody has a Lorne Michaels impersonation who's successful. So since I'm going to do it the other way around, I'm going to start with a Lorne Michaels impersonation and then, try to cultivate success from that. I'm putting the system on trial is what I'm saying. So Joe, you're running a little long. You won the battle, but you lost the war. Yeah, that was my Lorne Michaels or my Jimmy Stewart. Who knows? It could have been either one. Wait. No. You're looking at this podcast all wrong. You're thinking the ending of the podcast is like here, like I'm going to say it. I'm going to end the podcast. No. The ending of the podcast is in Jacques' house. It's in Beth's house. What are you gonna? You're gonna take their podcast from them? What? I mean, Ted, you were there. You were listening since day one. We can get through this podcast together. We just got to stick together. Now, Smartless isn't selling. Smartless is buying. And why? Because we're panicking and they're not. See, I'm panicking because I flubbed the line. But we can get through this. Look, how much will it take to get you through the end of the podcast? Yeah. You want me to say don't forget? Is that what you want? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, all right. It's fine. I'll just... You know what? No. You sit around here and you spin your little web and you think the whole podcast revolves around you. Well, it doesn't, Mr. Lambert. In the vast configurations of things, you're nothing but a scurvy little spider. And that goes for you too, Biff. It goes for you too, Joe. It goes for you too, Dan Cray, whose song we're probably going to hear again. Which one is it? Are you going to play Tucker? Yeah, you're gonna play Other Break or Struggly. Yeah, you like Struggly. Struggly's a short song. It's short and sweet. Yeah, like this Campbell's Chicken Soup. That's right. I used to do Campbell's Chicken Soup commercials. You forgot, didn't you? Well, I didn't, Mr. Potter. Anyway, my father didn't think doing a Carnival Personnel ending was such a bad thing. He was a greater man than you'll ever be. Anyways, well, I've gone on too long here. Yeah, this is your podcast. You do what you want. I'll just tell you one thing. Don't forget. Get me out of this thing. I can't get out of the voice. Help. Please. Kill me. That's it. You kill me. That's the ending. You kill me. Don't play the song yet. Listen to my pleas for help. Do what you want. Don't forget. I'll play the song.